Yo, what's up, guys? I know it's been a minute since we've done like some entertainment-based stuff, comic book stuff. We've been really top heavy on the channel with like politics because of the election and everything else that was going on. But as I promised, I'm getting back to a lot of the stuff that you guys know me for, the entertainment, the cultural stuff. That's what it's all about. And because, with Disney Plus, that whole rollout, we are getting a series of things that are going to be taking place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that are going to be going directly to Disney Plus. I think considering this whole COVID thing, we may be getting even more of that stuff moved over. But first, started with Wandavision. A lot of you guys asked me so many questions about this. What are my thoughts on it when we do the show for canon's sake, which you should be catching live at 12 p.m. throughout the week. That's 12 p.m. Central. And I wanted to discuss my thoughts. I guess I'll review each individual episode after this, but for the sake of this video, we'll just discuss basically 1 through 5, since I missed all of those and covering all those or reviewing all of those. 1 through 5 episodes, 1 through 5, we're going to talk about those. I'm going to summarize it. I'm going to rather give you my thoughts, my reaction, and kind of go from there. Let me first mention that I'm a little far removed from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, not just because there's so much time in between something that I saw that was related to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I guess it more so applies to the fact that it's not like comic books. My connection to it isn't like the comic books. So where it seems like up here is like an encyclopedia, I can just rattle off some stuff that happened. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm not really that guy. I kind of need to go rewatch things to kind of give me more perspective on certainly the world, because it doesn't seem to stick for me like it does with the comic books. I'm a little removed from it. But with that being said, you know that the comic books are a big part of not just the channel, but why I am so intrigued by the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as well as some of the things that happens with DC. That's where I started. So I want to see live action depictions of course, the characters that I know and love, but also I want to see some respect put on some of the names. And that's my perspective. I have to hold them to the standard. And I know a lot of folks think that that's unrealistic, considering that it's a live action depiction. But look, if you don't want to do that, let's say if you don't want to respect the source material or the legacy of these characters, don't even use them. So of course, if you're going to grab a character from the comic book, it is very reasonable for guys like myself to hold them to that particular standard. I do not go so much into detail like others with like reading sort of in on the rumors that are happening, who's going to show up here with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's not really my thing. Freeze framing certain portions of the video or episode or movie or something. Hey, look at that in the background. That may lead to this, and that. That's not my type of thing. I just see it as is. So it makes for a more honest interpretation, at least in my honest opinion when it comes to that. But before we get started, I guess let me mention that there will be spoilers. I do not do spoiler-free reviews over anything. So if you're that kind of guy that's into that, look, this may not be the video for you. All right, so WandaVision, it's a kind of intriguing concept when you saw like the promo footage, and it was set like kind of this old 50s, 60s sitcom looking thing. And that's very much what it is when you first view the show. And it can really throw you off, especially again, because we've had so much time between the last thing that we saw that was part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You're like, what in the world is going on? And I found myself watching, more specifically the first 2 episodes, not really understanding the direction that they were going, but it didn't mean that I hated that. I know a lot of people hated it. Look, it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They want explosions. They want all this action and everything that's going on. And then you give them WandaVision, and it seems to be some sort of respect to like these old sitcoms. But what it does do when you consider the first episodes and then going into 3, 4, and 5, it gives you perspective, and it gives you a lot more respect for those first couple of episodes in particular. Though, yes, it does seem to drag on a little bit if you don't know what's going on. But if you don't know, basically you're seeing Wanda as well as Vision, that's Scarlet Witch and Vision, and that's what I call WandaVision. I figured you know that at least by now, but they're in this town of Westview. So you're spending the first couple of episodes of them sort of getting acclimated in this town, meeting their neighbors, and whatnot. It's a little weird. Some of the encounters that they have, it does seem to give the audience this sort of idea that something else is taking place. But that's very minimal when you consider the first couple of episodes. What you're really dealing with is, again, them meeting like their neighbors, trying to, it's almost as if they just moved in, trying to figure out what exactly is going on, why it is that they're there. So that's really all the first couple of episodes are. But you do see some cool, like, because it's shot like a TV show. Again, you're talking about 50s, 60s sitcoms. And then when we go into episodes like 3, 4, we see that there's, it's like this ever changing, sort of they're going through the decades. Hey, it's a 70s sitcom now, and it just keeps moving up and up. We go from black and gray, black and white rather, to some things that are more akin to having that sort of color that you expect when in those latter decades. So that was a really cool thing for them to do, to not only, again, show respect to what was going on back then, which is, cool to see that done right now. Again, we're talking about 2020, 2021, but it certainly moves everything along. And when you're seeing everything that's happening with like the ads, it's like a TV show, actual TV shows. You're seeing ads that are nod to like Hydra and stuff like that. But I can't remember if it was the first or the second episode, may have been the first one, where at the end of it, you see that it kind of pans out from a TV and you see that obviously someone is watching what is going on. And that you get that kind of in the first couple of episodes, and now you're like, okay, wait a minute. This is not just going to be a setup to where I'm just simply watching Wanda and Vision in a 50s, 60s, 70s sitcom or something like that. So that was a very bold route, because all of the promotional materials seem to make it look like that. But I think if you're not silly, you think that they were going to go in a different route. However, they just didn't tell you that. They kind of led up to that, which was really cool. So the first 2 episodes, if you have not watched it and you're watching this video now, they do drag in the sense that there's not any action, not a whole lot going on. It's just them seeming to be in a 50s sitcom that's set in this town of Westview, and they are meeting like their neighbors and what have you. Once we get introduced to Monica Rambeau, who you've seen me talk so much about on my channel, we're going to discuss all of that a little later. But she gets introduced as a character, again, in the sitcom. And that's when the world really starts to open up, because, again, that's when we first, can't remember, started with G. I can't remember the name. Someone, I'm sure in the comments will tell me exactly what it was. But she, what was it, Geraldine? Well, I can't remember what exactly it was, something like that. But basically, she is in there as a person, as part of some like board committee or whatever in their neighborhood, something like that, that's going on with Wanda. And we meet her as that character. So you don't know that she's Monica Rambeau, because she does not go by that name. It isn't until again, everything gets sped up. And yes, Wanda and Vision end up having their set of twins. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But you come to find, when she acknowledges the fact that her brother, that's Quicksilver that we're referring to, much like what's happened, I believe she mentions Ultron. And then that's when the world really opens up, because Wanda's like, wait a minute, what did you say? How did you know that? Why are you here? And then she blasts this character out of this particular like city or neighborhood that they're in. And then after that episode, we learn that that character was Monica Rambeau, that went in as an FBI agent, really sort of undercover. And that's sort of when it opens up, you realize that, okay, we're watching a TV show. FBI is now involved. SWORD, formerly SWORD, is who Monica Rambeau used to be under. I guess I kind of got to speed this up here because I'm jumping all over the place. Basically, it tells you, I believe it's after that episode, once she's blasted out of the neighborhood, they tell you that, okay, or they show you a scene where Monica basically reappears into this hospital, and it seems to take place after the snap was over, obviously that was wiped out. So all those people were coming back into the world after Thanos did the snap. So I'm guessing this is after the Iron Man situation, or rather after they had got everybody back in after he had deleted half of the universe. Again, my timeline's kind of messed up because I don't really remember. I need to go watch everything that take place. So you see all these people that seem to had been disappeared. They come back. And Monica's like, where's my mother? You find out that her mother had died of cancer. Of course, that confuses her. We're talking, you had that 5-year gap. You remember that as well if you had been paying attention to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So Monica was part of those that got snapped away. Funny thing about that happened in the Infinity Gauntlet. If you, an Infinity Gauntlet arc, that's what everybody watching me for, the comic book stuff. So if you read the Infinity Gauntlet arc, it's funny, there's a panel where all of the characters that are still existing, they were trying to figure out which one of the heroes that were still around so they can, of course, help in defeating Thanos or trying to resolve this problem. And if you look on one of those panels, you'll see that Monica Rambeau is actually there in the background. I covered this and it's a couple of my videos. I think it's actually the unique shoehorn of Captain Marvel. I think that was the video, but I talk about this and how she was actually one of those that disappeared, or it was at least acknowledged. Carol Danvers had absolutely nothing to do with that entire arc. We'll talk about that a little later. But what you need to know is Monica, once she's introduced, gives you a perspective on what's going on in this show. And that is that Monica realizes that Wanda is, at least in some way, shape, or form, in control of what's going on in Westview, and Westview seems to be in its own little dimension, and it's sort of this reality that is either being warped, or at least we think, and because Monica does say that all of these people are being like sort of mind controlled in this Westview, being mind controlled by in some capacity by her, by Scarlet Witch or Wanda, if you will, and that it seems that she is resurrected as well, Vision. So this goes in tune with her power set and her being able to alter reality. If whether it be House of M stuff or anything related to Scarlet Witch, she is an uber powerful character in terms of the things that she can do. But now again, you got perspective that she's working with the FBI, so it's almost like a demotion. We'll talk about that a little more here after her coming back. It was some sort of stipulation that was set in place by her mother, who was part of SWORD. So she is now working like with the FBI and doing some sort of groundwork. But Monica gets introduced, and one thing I do want to mention before I move on is that there's this character by the name of Agnes, who's one of the neighbors. And you can see that she's one of the few that's aware of what's going on. There's this instance in which she actually, something happened with them. Wandavision is in the room, and I believe there was something with the children, the two babies, which keep continuing to age, which is hilarious. But she's like, do you want to take this back from the top? So at first it's like, oh, well, she's acknowledging the fact that this is a show. However, it's also speaking to the fact that what Wanda, what she does in a couple of instances, she actually is able to like wipe out what's going on and seem to rewind the show. Or rather, that's what she wants the audience to see is what she wants them to see. So it seemed like, hey, we're about to take it back from the top. And Vision's noticing that, like, what is going on with all of that? So speaking of that, Vision is breaking free, of what seems to be under this control that maybe she was under, because Vision's like, wait a minute, now I'm understanding what's going on. What is going, something, well, at least is going on, rather, not what exactly is going on. Her and Wanda ended up having a powwow where Vision works at one of his co-workers. He was able to use some of his powers to make him snap out of it, and he's freaking out, talking about, you have to stop her. You have to stop her. She's hurting us, or something of that nature. Now, she's not directly referring. She doesn't say Wanda is or Scarlet Witch is. He doesn't say any of that. He just says that hers. So it's like, who is she talking about? Obviously, it seems to point towards Wanda, but MCU isn't always just going to go certainly with the obvious. But so Vision is breaking free. That's what's happening in episodes 4 and 5. He's starting to realize that something else is wrong. Again, they do get into it. But I think the cool thing about the introduction to Billy and Tommy, which are the kids, the twins, if you are familiar with the comic books, they're basically going to be Speed and Wiccan. And those with the latter, he's actually I don't want to say prominent. I guess he had a big thing to do with the whole recent event of Marvel's, what was that? that event where the Skrulls and the what's the names they had teamed up. I can't even remember it. That's how far removed I'm from comic books today because a lot of them suck. But Wiccan is a homosexual character, so he would be an original gay character that they could utilize, but I don't expect them to stop tokenizing a lot of these characters. So it's going to be interesting because they're growing up so fast. You're going to see both of those characters at some point within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I can almost guarantee, and it's interesting to see them be introduced, and because of their aging process, which is bizarre, they can act like almost ages themselves, and that does seem to be a real part of this reality. We're going to see them in the future, that's for sure. But the bombshell that happened at the end of episode number 5 was at the door. You know, Vision's like, I'm guessing you are in control of this. You know who that is, because he is thinking that she's in control of everything. But he rings the doorbell. Somebody rings the doorbell, and she's like, that's not me. And she goes to answer the doorbell, and we see that it's Quicksilver. But it's not the version of Quicksilver that we, of course, are used to in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's Fox's X-Men Quicksilver, which was the better Quicksilver, of course. So this is the first time that we kind of see this, though it was to be expected. You know, Marvel got all these properties back. So, or rather with the whole Disney deal, and then them buying all these companies back, they got in getting some of these properties back. So with the X-Men, but it's the first time that we kind of see that that's acknowledged to be a thing, because you have one of the characters, she's like, well, one of the FBI characters, she's like, well, what, they recast him? Kind of speaking to, okay, this is also a show, but also, of course, the audience is expected to know that that is that version of Quicksilver. So something's going on, be it multiversal and all of those sorts of things with this whole ordeal, because this is the first time that we see Quicksilver since his death. But this being this version of Quicksilver makes it very, very interesting. But considering those episodes 1 through 5, I want to give you guys my takeaway on this. And I want to remind you guys that my position remains the same. And that is that when it comes to Monica Rambeau, she was ruined. And she was not ruined because of this show. She was ruined because of what happened in the Captain Marvel movie, which is the most pointless movie to exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It had absolutely no business being there. It didn't make sense for her to be there, considering what happened at the end of Endgame, or rather in Infinity War. None of this makes sense. Yeah, her movie is sandwiched in between those, but it didn't make sense. She had no bearing on that outcome. She just exists to really be shown how powerful she certainly was. But they did use that movie to crap on Monica Rambeau because they infantilized her. They have her looking, let's call her Auntie Carol, having her looking up to Carol Danvers. And by the way, that is nothing that is historical when it comes to the actual books, and it's actually criminal when you consider that she's one of the original black characters that exist. And then when you consider her upbringing and how she's not connected to OG Captain Marvel like Miss Marvel is, aka Carol Danvers, aka the current Captain Marvel, which of course they're trying to erase, and they did. They screwed up 2 characters in that movie, Marvel as well as Monica Rambeau. But I know people are kind of stoked about what's going on, even people that generally would agree with me, because there's an instance in the show that Captain Marvel is mentioned, because she's talking about the FBI is talking about how, well, Scarlet Witch almost destroyed Thanos. If it wasn't for that blitz, how they know all of this, like it was filmed, like they're the movie watchers. That's kind of bizarre. But one of them corrects them, and they're like, well, it was actually, Captain Marvel. She's the one that could do that as well. And Monica was like, we're not talking about her, and she clearly felt some kind of way, which is going to lead to something in the future. Nonetheless, I don't like what they did to the character. And when I saw that scene, I'm going to make a prediction here in a minute. But just to recap for those of you that hadn't seen my videos, which you should go watch, how they ruined that character. She has no connection to Carol Danvers. She has no connection to Marvel. She was just called Captain Marvel because she's the captain of S.W.O.R.D. Here, which they kind of make a nod to that. That's not her upbringing necessarily in the OG comic books or anything, which we've covered on the channel many times. And that's not has nothing to do with her how she getting her powers, which it seems like it's going to come from whatever anomalies going on in this reality, which I'm going to be very, very upset if that's how they consider her getting her powers nonetheless. They ruined her, having her look up to Carol Danvers, because what it's doing is it's setting up this scene, which obviously there's some animosity going on. Is it because she couldn't save her mother? Or is it because she had been gone that whole entire time because she looked up to her? She's his auntie. Where are you at? That's my prediction as far as what's going to happen. There's going to be some sort of beef, like I just mentioned, and it's going to get acknowledged. They may even fight it out for a movie or a show or something. And then what's going to end up happening is, unfortunately, she's going to take the name of Captain Marvel, but it's too late. It's already destroyed, because at that point, she's just Carol Danvers' shadow. And that's not anything that I want to see, but I'm willing to predict that that is what's going to happen. Do I want it to happen? Absolutely not. Actually, we'd rather her go by the name of Spectrum or Photon or one of her other names that she has adopted, as opposed to Captain Marvel, so she can exist at least some sort of separation. But if she inherits the name in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because she does know that she exists, well, at this point, it's just going to be her following in these footsteps, or rather taking up this mantle, which is not what happened in the book. She was not called Captain Marvel because she was named after the OG Marvel, much like what happened with Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers coming within the past decade or so, becoming Captain Marvel. That is all connection to the OG Marvel, which she does have a connection to. That does not exist for Monica Rambeau. So that's my prediction, and it's going to be very important. My next thing is how much I despise this version of Jimmy Woo. Now, Jimmy Woo is a very interesting character. For me, he's too beta in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's cracking up jokes here and there. That's not who Jimmy Woo certainly is. I don't like the version that they are depicting of him. And because who he is, I hope that we get the introduction to, which I would say is really Marvel taking a shot in recent years at making fresh new characters, and that's the Agents of Atlas. So hopefully because of Woo, we get those new Agents of Atlas, and we get the Arrows of the world and all of that. Hopefully that's what we end up getting. But the character in this is goofy, and there's like no connection. He's just Jimmy Woo, really, in name. Monica, the actor, I don't hate her or anything like that. She's looking the part, and hopefully she can continue to knock that out the park. We'll see. But, when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I can't get my hopes up with them. Y'all know that. I can't. We know the direction that they're going in. I think the pivot moment happened at some point with the implementation of Captain Marvel, which was a very unique shoehorn. Again, go watch that video. But it's a very unique shoehorn because of how she was placed in it. She had no business being in this arc. It didn't make sense for her to be there. But then when they shoved her in there, you think that she's going to have this big impact, and she doesn't. So it just confirms the fact that they wanted to sandwich her between that to ensure certainly the success, because she had been catching on in the books, and they were going to use the movies to sort of implement her, because they wanted that stronger female character. Why they didn't get behind Scarlet Witch, who knows? But let these idiots on YouTube tell it that we're just toxic males that hate female characters. Though I think a lot of us would have been fine with Scarlet Witch filling that role of being the strong, powerful female in your universe. It did not have to be Captain Marvel. Nonetheless, you consider the direction that they're going in. You see the direction that they went in Captain Marvel. You see the direction that some of their hires. I believe Jack Schaefer is the writer, which we've talked about in the past. I believe I was mentioning her with the Black Widow thing, and how she was talking about, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the same person. She was talking about how, canon gets in the way. Basically, the source material gets in the way, and it's discriminatory, and she has no desire to use that. They are hiring people. What Disney is, you're seeing this with Marvel, and for you got Star Wars fans out there, you see that. We talked about this on Friday Night Tights with Nerd Erotic, and how they're getting people that have zero connection to this material. I'm not talking about people acting the role. I'm talking about people writing it. And they see this as an opportunity, because the Marvel Cinematic Universe has struck gold. Now, they didn't get to strike gold by doing this social justice bullcrap or anything, and I'm not saying that's what Wandavision is yet, because it's not. But what I am saying is that, considering that is the direction that they're going in, you've seen all the hires done with both Star Wars and Marvel. You see the Eternals casting is tokenization fest left to right, and that seems to be a priority. I cannot get my hopes up, though it seems like this show in the direction of Marvel Cinematic Universe could be decent. Now, this is one thing that I will say is that with the whole pandemic thing, and we see that Hollywood's taking a hit financially, this may be a point to where they cannot afford to deviate so far away from their core consumer base that they'll lose money at some point. It won't make as much money as they possibly can. You can afford to take those hits when you just making all of this money, but because the hit that Hollywood took in general, that may be what salvages this and what may make them pivot. They can't really be beating folks over the head with any of the messaging. Again, that's not what built this universe in the first place. Every single major story arc was a version, not always accurate by any means, but was a version of something that they adapted from the comics, which they respected the source material. Basically, the whole Infinity War Endgame, all of that is basically a depiction of what happened in the Infinity Gauntlet arc. You know, Ultron, Age of Ultron, you know, Ragnarok, you know, these other instances that we have already seen before that they attempted to depict, and that's every major plot point was basically, that was what that was. Hopefully they keep it going, but I can't get my hopes up considering the people that they're hiring, considering people like Victoria Alonso say very, very stupid things like the X-Men. Why would they call them the X-Men? Because they have all these women. They have folks that are connected to these projects. It's what frustrates me the most about Marvel and how they're carrying these comics, not just with the comic books, but also with the direction that they're going with writers in the movie. There's plenty of super fans that are fans of your material, fans of comics, that would have no problem knocking it out the park with any sort of script. But instead of hiring them, they bring on these weirdos that have absolutely no business being anywhere near these sorts of projects. Back scratching IOUs or whatever it is, however they diversity hires, however they get these positions, it doesn't matter. There's almost zero evidence that they ever had any connection to the books. So they skip over all those that probably would do those justice. I don't think anybody expects them to be exactly like the comic books, but we expect the material to be respected, but they're bringing on people that seem to, if anything, find that as an inconvenience because it gets in the way, because guys like myself are going to be referencing it in the event that you screw up. But the last thing I do want to bring up about that is that it does get your mind thinking. It may be a big bait and switch because of what I just said, but it gets your mind thinking. Because now that they're entertaining this multiversal deal, which we already knew, kind of confirmed in some of the news and stuff, which I don't pay too much attention, like I mentioned to, like, they could fix so much. Not just the implementation of X-Men. Like if they wanted to, I don't expect them to use all the versions of the X-Men characters that we've seen, but I expect some of them to cross over into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So whether it be with combination with the snap, the acknowledgement of these multiverses. I know I hate multiverses, but what they can do is something akin to a crisis event, which is a DC thing, and I don't know if that's the route they want to go, but you go the idea of merging a bunch of universes. That way you could say that the Fantastic Four or the X-Men or any of these characters that you're going to bring in, they are there and they've already existed prior to it. So you don't have to do all of this explaining to try, or you have to do some stupid, like have the Fantastic Four be new and they have to follow into the Avengers, they're Marvel's original family. No, you don't have to do that. It's just they already existed. They already were doing the thing because now you have the rights to this character. See, the problem is that will make too much sense. That's why I don't see them doing it. They're going to drop this ball in some way. They haven't done it a lot. I mean, we've seen the books. If books have anything, because Kevin Feige's over all of this crap now, if the books have anything to show for the direction that they're going with those, that may just be the precedent that was set. And the direction that we're going to go with the Marvel Cinematic Universe may be just that. I mean, even with the whole implementation of we know Jane Foster's store is going to be coming, which is something that just happened in the books, not even maybe 6-7 years ago when that first happened, right? And that's already about to be a thing. So just these characters that are skipping the line, all these other villains and stuff, which I hope that we see, heroes that they still hadn't used that weren't even associated with the X-Men, skipping the line. So we'll see. And then they bring in the characters, that they don't even, that nobody asked for. Miss Marvel, America Chavez, Riri Williams, who you know is about to show up, especially now that Iron Man is not going to be in the picture. You know that she's about to show up. And these are fresh characters, which most of them are tokenized versions of other characters. Nonetheless, the only one that seems worth a crap. We'll see what they do with She-Hulk. I don't know what direction they go in, but I'm going to be very critical of that because She-Hulk is to me the best, when it comes to writing and comic books, the best handled tokenized character to ever exist in mainstream comics to me is She-Hulk. I've said that. I've gone on record saying that. So we'll see what they do with her, but I have no faith in this company. I have no faith in the people that they're hiring to write these projects and to do something that's competent that makes a lot of sense. But so far, I'm gonna say issues 1 through 5. Episodes 1 through 5 of WandaVision have been okay. Okay, they're not trash, they're not garbage or anything like that. It's going to be acquired taste, especially for the first two. But we know that this opens the door up so much. What are the next villains? Who are they going to be? We're going to get a Mephisto sighting or anything like that. And what does that come with? What version of Ghost Rider are we going to see because of the Mephisto thing? There's so much that could happen, and I hope that they do this right because they have all the properties that they need now to make this make sense. But I think what we're going to get in the future at some point is this big pivot, and it's going to be tokenization and social justice bullcrap because that's what they care about, lecturing the audience. But so far, I will give them credit. That's not what WandaVision is. So we'll see. I'll keep updating you guys, continuously reviewing, giving you guys my thoughts on what's going on with the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I'm out of here. Until next time.